Hi, Charles Rizzle. Always, every time I go live. Hi, Charles with SirBookSage here. Welcome to my YouTube channel where I talk science fiction and fantasy. I do recorded videos and live streams. And tonight I am continuing on with my Wheel of Time Season 2 discussion. Tonight I'm going to be talking about Episode 5. And if you've been watching my other live streams regarding this, you know that I haven't been the biggest fan necessarily of this adaptation. There are some things about it that I like, but there's plenty that I don't like, particularly how much they're deviating from the actual books. But I wanted to talk specifically about Episode 5 because, surprisingly, I think this is the best episode of this second season so far. I still have my issues with how much they're straying from the source material, but with what they're actually doing in their own story they're telling, this was a generally well-executed episode. So I want to kind of dive into what happened. And hello, Stanislas. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Thank you for joining. So I'm just still trying to wrap my head around all the Karian changes to this TV show from the books. If you watched my sort of mid-season recap I posted the other day, it's an hour-long video. Half of that is me just going over the stark differences between Rand and Karian in the books and Rand and Karian here in this TV show. But this is the first time where, okay, just Stan, cool. This is the first time where I'm actually interested in what they're doing on this show in Karian with this brand new story that they're doing here instead of what was in the books. But I just kind of want to walk through what actually happened in this episode. So like every episode in this series, we begin with a cold open. And I do have to say this is probably the weakest cold open so far in this TV show, because it's really a cold open in name only, to be frank. They just took the first scene and they just showed it before the opening title sequence. But it wasn't your like traditional cold open that shows you this one sort of separate thing that then has payoff later. This just is how this particular episode opens. But we do see High Lady Surath come finally into the city of Falm, which is where the Shan-Chan landed at the end of season 1 and where they've mainly set up shop. Up to this point in the season, we've seen some of the Shan-Chan as they've headed deeper inland away from this coastal town. But Surath has finally come back to Falm with this, she has a caravan that's still behind her, hasn't arrived there yet. And we see that the High Lord Turok is here, and we are finally introduced to Turok, who you saw in some of the season 2 trailers. And you can tell right away that he's the one in charge, not Surath, because she's actually walking instead of being carried on this giant palanquin, and he's there in this courtyard with guards and people all around him, and he's sitting on this sort of elevated platform on a throne. And right away, you see the power dynamic. And Surath's voice, the woman who's always with her, is walking on her right, and we have a Shamael walking on her left, just openly walking down with her. And we see, for some strange reason, Loyal, the Ogier, and Ingtar, the Shinaran captain, both dressed in servants' garbs, walking behind Shamael. And they're being presented, I think, to Turok by Lady Surath as gifts. But right away we see Surath is angry because Turok was not to note. The names are very similar. Turok was very angry because High Lady Surath was not supposed to go deeper into the continent. She was supposed to stay in the area where they've kind of taken power already. But she's been off doing her own thing, and he doesn't know why, and he's not happy about it. And Surath is Surath, quite frankly, insults him, which is not a wise thing to do to Torok. Especially the Shanchan have a very, very structured hierarchy in their society. And you don't give lip to someone who's higher on that sort of hierarchical ladder than you. And Turok is going to punish her now. And he makes her kneel, and he basically strips her of off his council, makes her kneel, and one of the other guards comes up and chops off the long fingernails that she's been sporting. And basically as an insult and a diminishment and a denigration, and then dismisses her. And then Ishamael, however, tells Turok that he has a gift of his own for him. And we hear, listen close, I think you hear the whistling, and in strolls Padan Fain with the sort of little box that holds the Horn of Valer. And Ishamael presents it to Turok as his gift. And Turok knows what it is right away. And Turok realizes, with this we can control the whole world. And yes, Dan, when Turok commands Surath to kneel, she turns and looks to Ishamael for guidance instead. And Ishamael nods and says, kneel. And then she finally kneels. And, Turok picks up on this right away. And it's a very interesting dynamic. Personally, I think it's a little clunky, the way they're doing this in this show, because this is Surath kind of telling Turok that Ishamael's the one who's really in control of her. And that's a pretty dangerous thing for her to do, so open in front of everyone in this society, because of how structured and everything is. So, but it certainly is a reminder to the audience, that Surath is acting on Ishamael's command, which means she knows who Ishamael is. And then you realize, if you didn't understand this up until this point, I think this was done to let the audience in on the fact that, okay, High Lady Surath is a dark friend. That's what this seems to indicate. And this, I guess, was the show's way of kind of letting the audience know, okay, Surath works for Ishamael. She knows who he is. And Turok makes note of it, but he doesn't say anything in that scene. He just kind of files it away, and that we come back to that later on, though. But overall, it's a interesting setup. We see this power shift in the Shanchan. You learn about that, just how powerful someone more powerful than you is in this society. But you also see that Surath is someone who pushes against that power structure. She's very much, in some ways, maybe not intentional on the show's part, but she's similar to Nynaeve, at least in that little respect here in the TV show. Nynaeve is going to push back on the power structure in the White Tower, and Surath seems to generally be doing that in her own society. And I don't know if she's been like that always, or because they're on this side of the world, and as far as she knows, the Empress is still across the ocean. Maybe she's feeling emboldened by not being surrounded by the full power of the Empress of the Nine Moons and all that stuff. So, but overall, I think it was a clunky scene, but I understand why the show did it, because it accomplishes what the writers want that scene to accomplish, letting you know that she knows who Ishamael is. But then we're off to Rand and Moiraine, and this episode does what a couple of the earlier episodes did, is it keeps bouncing from group to group to group to group all throughout the episode. And this is something that I think is holding this show back a little bit. They haven't really found their rhythm in how to fit in such a large cast and give each of these certain groups that are together, doing their own thing. They haven't really found their rhythm and how to show everything they need to show everyone doing in each episode. this is something I think Game of Thrones did very well as a TV show. As they went deeper and deeper into that series, the cast grew bigger and bigger, but they managed to juggle how to move between each of the characters who were important in any given season. They did a pretty good job balancing things out. In this show so far, it's just the scenes are just a little too short for my liking, and it makes for a bit of a disjointed storytelling to move so quick to the next group and then to the next group and then back to this one and then the next one. I wish they would just sit in each scene just a little bit more, dial them in more, and just give us an opportunity to have time to breathe in each scene, because we're given this little morsel and then on to the next. And I'm hoping this is something that as they move, probably not this season, but maybe next season and forward, if there is a fourth season, that they kind of work out and find that rhythm and that pacing, because it's a bit off here. And this is, I think, a drawback really of only having 8 episodes, which I think is really, really harming this TV series. This is a story that needs 10 episodes easy, and I think it really needs 12 episodes a season to really have the room to tell what it needs to tell. Because this season is supposed to be book 2, The Great Hunt. Plus, it's supposed to have a big chunk of book 3, The Dragon Reborn, in it. Because, as I've mentioned before, the showrunner has said season 3 is meant to be book 4, The Shadow Rising. So there's a lot of book 3, The Dragon Reborn, that I don't know exactly how they're going to fit everything the audience is going to need to learn in before we go into the Threefold Land to Ruidian and the whole Karakarn stuff plays out. And yes, very good point, Stan, about the chopping her nails off. I mean, you saw in the moment that she was upset by it. And there's a scene later with her and the Shamael where he takes her hand and she tries to pull away, but he won't let her at first. But yeah, they really didn't tell the audience this is how significant that is to their society. I mean, that's like among the largest insults. You've basically been demoted in society with that kind of, like, cutting those nails like that. So it's not just a punishment in public. Like you're saying, there's a social element that comes with it. She's been knocked down into a lower tier of society there. And again, this is part of the problem, like I was mentioning, them spending so short a time with each scene. They're not giving themselves time to really show those implications and show the ramifications of what happened to her. And I don't know I guess they have so much they have to juggle. They're probably going to say, okay, what can we just cut? What we'd like it to be there, but between this and something that has to be there in our limited real estate, they're going to go with the has to be there stuff, hopefully. They certainly spent enough time in season 1 doing completely made up stuff and cutting out have to be there things, in my opinion, but we'll see. This show, this season at least, it finally, in the 5th episode, seems to sort of be coalescing into whatever it is they're trying to convey this season. Because I will say this about episode 5, even with its flaws, it finally advances the plot forward a bit. There are things we begin to learn in this episode that are important for the remainder of this entire series. So it's good to see them finally getting around to start telling its audience some things. And but like I said, we're off to Moraine and Rand, and they are running in the woods at night, running away from Lanfear. Rand has no idea what the hell happened. He's like, you just killed that woman. Why are we running? And she's trying to explain to him that she's not dead. And, when we are in trouble, we will be if we don't escape her. And then we see Selene, that we now know is Lanfear, wake up and heal herself with the one power, and it's dark weaves. And out into the night she goes after them. And Moraine and Rand come across this nearby stables, and there's a stable master there. and 4 horses, and Moraine's like, saddle 3 of the horses. I'm commandeering them. You're coming with us. And then Moiraine takes Rand's sword and kills the 4th horse, so Lanfear can't have a ride, so they can get a head start on her. And this show seems to kind of be rubbing it in that Rand is totally useless with that sword, and the one time he's tried to use it this season, which was in the last episode, he was immediately disarmed in like 5 seconds. So, and we also have, it's just kind of a reminder that Rand doesn't know how to even use the sword. And Moiraine at this point has killed more people with this sword, I think, than Rand has in this TV series. And yes, Stan, the killing of the horse was over dramatic. It was totally unnecessary, especially with right after they leave and Lanfear arrives at the stables. She sees the dead horse, and then a guy just comes riding up on a horse, and she kills that guy and takes that horse. So it was melodrama for the sake of melodrama. It was showing like the audience, reminding the audience the lengths Moiraine will go to get what Moiraine wants. And perhaps to show how desperate maybe Moiraine is, not being able to wield the one power. I think maybe they're going for that kind of dynamic. And they do like to try to have a little bit of shock factor. I mean, if you think about Moiraine in this TV show, I mean, in season 1, she basically kills that ferryman in the first season. And she just stone cold, like, kills this horse here in this season. So I think, you can see what I think they're trying to do, but I don't think they're handling it well. And Moiraine is not a likable character in this TV show at all at this point, even with her, the show's insistence on her being the main character more than Rand, even though Rand is clearly the main character in the books. But, yeah, for someone they're trying to make the main character, they really don't make her a likable person. And then she's sort of crying, almost crying later to make you feel sympathetic towards her. I'm not sure, but she just isn't really like Moiraine. Moiraine can be very manipulative in the books and do things and say things that people don't understand and don't like. But again, they've done a very poor job in the characterization in this TV show for a lot of these characters. And yes, see, Stan is like, I would have preferred Moiraine to be clever over desperate. And yes, and this is this is something the show's done to themselves, because Moiraine just isn't really present a lot in book 2. She's there when Amyrlin comes and meets Rand, which is early on in the book. And I don't think she doesn't have much of a presence at this point in the story, because she's not a POV character, and the girls are at the White Tower, and in the book, the boys are on the hunt for this horn, chasing after Pattern Fane, so she's not with any POV character, so we don't really see her, except for when she's around like Rand and them at the beginning of the book. So the TV show, because they made her the main character of the show, they had to create a story for her, to give her for this stretch until we get to next season and the next book, where Moiraine is like back with POV characters for a while. And so they took her powers away at the end of season 1 to give her something to do here in season 2. And they've turned her into just a very dislikable character at this point, to be honest. She's not handling not having her powers all that well. Now, I will say there are things in this episode that lead me to believe that she has indeed been shielded and not stilled. Because one of the things that they made a point in this episode was to begin to show who isn't really bound by the 3 oaths in the White Tower anymore. And that even though you swear those oaths, and one of those oaths is you can't lie, if you swear other oaths later to the Dark One, that oath will cancel out the 3 oaths to the Aes Sedai. But when Moiraine is asked, like, who's this guy, who's this kid, you see her hesitation, and she says, this is Rand. And that's, to me, was an indication that she's very carefully answering that question, because she hasn't been stilled, she's been shielded. So she just can't wield the one power, but she's still bound by the oaths at this point. And, but anyway, we're back. We finally go to Perrin after that initial, Moiraine and Rand running from Lanfear. And Perrin is with Elias, and they're finally chatting a little more again about these emerging abilities of Perrin, how Perrin's a wolf brother, and Perrin wants to know about, will my eyes eventually turn yellow and stay yellow? And then Elias is like, yes, you're moving into this different world now, and you have to leave your old world behind. The wolves are your new pack. Your friends are not your pack anymore. You've got to let them go. You're entering this realm, this world that I've been living in. And in this world, you'll never be alone, because, there'll always be wolves and other things you can communicate with. You'll be happy when your eyes stay yellow, because you'll have that wolf sight, and which will serve you much better than your regular eyes do. And Perrin is looking off into the night, kind of feeling out how his sort of night vision now, an extended sight. And he realizes that Elias has taken him back to Otwin's Mill, which is where they were initially attacked by the Seanchan. He thought Elias was guiding him to where the Seanchan were going. And then he realizes that Elias has been taking him in the opposite direction. And Perrin is not ready to let his friends go, and he's not going to abandon them. So he basically tells Elias that he's leaving, and he's going to follow him. He's going in search of his friends, because he can't abandon them to captivity. Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense for Elias to go back to that town. Like, how Elias is going to know the town is full of White Cloaks, because the wolves are ahead of him and are scouting and would see that. And the show just seems to ignore it. And what I also don't understand is, Perrin actually ends up going into that town and then runs into, because Uno's dead body is in a cage, and we went into an Aiel woman in a cage, and we don't see Elias for the whole rest of the episode. So, why would Elias bring him back to this town full of White Cloaks and then just not go there himself? I don't know where the hell Elias went. So it was just bizarre. It doesn't, like you said, Elias should have been taking him out into the forest, away from where they were, away from where Perrin wants to go, just getting the hell out of that area and taking him to a different part of the continent where they're not going to be hunted and chased. So he can kind of break Perrin into this world in a calmer environment. But, like you said, whatever the plot needs to happen, happens, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. So, but then we're back to Rand and Moiraine. And again, we're jumping around back and forth at this point. And Lanfear is riding down the road. She's just riding hard. And as she goes by, Moiraine and Rand come out of the bushes on foot. And it seems like they've kind of hopped off the trail to throw Lanfear off. And this is where Moiraine begins to tell Rand about who Lanfear is, and that Rand did not actually battle or defeat the Dark One at the Eye of the World, that all he ended up doing was releasing Ishamael, the leader of the Forsaken, from his own prison. And Ishamael has since released Lanfear, another one of the Forsaken, the Daughter of the Night. And that if they manage to free all the rest of the Forsaken, any hope of winning the last battle will be gone. And then back to Perrin, because, this show can't just sit with one character for more than a tiny brief period. But we're back to, come on. Sorry, I don't want to do that. Just trying to move around my screens. This setup I have, I'm still working out the logistics of using StreamYard to live stream, and it's a very different interface than what I'm used to. But anyway, we're back with Perrin. And Hopper has come along with Perrin because Hopper's kind of attached himself to Perrin a bit at this point. And Hopper's trying to guide Perrin back to the town, to Atuan's mill. And Perrin wants to go on, but then Perrin looks into the town with his sort of wolf sight that he has now, which... So they took what they first showed Perrin having in terms of abilities in the first episode, where he's sort of seeing like this past play out in front of him. And now they've taken that and just turned it into like wolf sight, where he can see this sort of like a wolf vision by like looking off, and he can then see in that sort of dreamy-esque sort of look what's down the road. So they've already changed the powers that they showed him having in episode 1. And so, which I guess is good, because what they showed him doing in episode 1 is not what his abilities are in the books. But he sees that in the town they have Uno's dead body in a cage, similar to like a cage we saw in the first season where there was a dead Ioman in it. I don't know if it's the exact kind of cage, but a similar concept. So Perrin sneaks into the town, and he wants to free Uno's body so he can give him a burial. And he picks up this like woodsman's axe. It's really for just chopping wood. It's not like a proper battle axe like Perrin's supposed to have in this book, in this story. And he's gonna smash open the door to the cage, and he hears a woman's voice telling him that that's going to make too much noise. And then he looks, and there's an Aiel woman in the cage nearby. And then he's kind of confused, and he doesn't know what to do. And then a man walks up to him. This guy's wearing like a brown like cloak. He just kind of strolls up, and he's like introduces himself a bit. He's talking to Perrin, saying, you know, stay away from her. She's way too dangerous. Like one of the people who went near her had their arm almost ripped off. And Dane tosses her basically a water skin into the cage for her. And he's telling Perrin, it's like, well, we have a curfew in town, so you're here or you're staying. And come, there's an inn nearby. We'll sit and we'll have drinks. I'll get you a room for the night so you can at least have a good night's rest before, you know, whatever your business might be. So they go. So Perrin goes with Dane, and they go and they sit down outside of this tavern. They're having drinks and just kind of talking. Dane realizes he's from the Two Rivers because of the ring Perrin's wearing, apparently. So I don't know that Dane has ever been to the Two Rivers part of this, but he seems to know their sort of metalwork. But again, we see Eamon Valda then, the White Cloak, the questioner from season 1, suddenly shows up in the background. So we have White Cloaks coming into town. And Perrin is like, okay, I'll take my room now. Because he wants to get out of sight, because, you know, he attacked Valda in the first season. Well, because Valda was torturing him. But anyway, he's hiding inside, waiting for his room, and he has Valda talking to Dane, and we learn it's Dane Bornhold, and whose father, I think, is the commander of the White Cloaks overall. And from Valda says that Seanchan have gone to Falma. So this is when Perrin, I guess, realizes where he has to go. And then that's it for Perrin for now, and then we're off to Lanfear again. And Lanfear catches the stable woman who has all 3 horses, and Lanfear realizes she's been tricked. And is trying to figure out what to do next. And she doesn't kill the stable woman. She doesn't kill the stable woman, but she uses the one power to sew the woman's mouth shut so she can't talk, and leaves her there. Let's see. Stan says, do you think that scene happens after the opening scene? I'm confused how the White Cloaks got this town back, and why the Seanchan being kicked out wasn't remarked on by Turok. Yeah, because I don't know when this is supposed to have happened. It, clearly happened off screen. I don't know if the White Cloaks drove the Shanshan out of that town, or if Suroth, when she was just done rounding up whoever she wanted to round up in that town, she just was like, all right, let's back to Falma now. We've gotten what we needed, because we learn a little later in the episode that Ishamael is the reason Suroth. Whoops, don't knock the mic. That Ishamael was the reason Suroth went to that town anyway, because he was looking for, particularly Perrin and them. So, but yeah, the show just glosses over like when the White Cloaks showed up. And I don't really know if they drove the Shanshan away or if the Shanshan had just already left and the White Cloaks just arrived. And they've done a poor job, really, of reintroducing the White Cloaks this season. They just kind of popped up here. So, but again, I don't know if it's just a matter of lazy storytelling or we don't need to really show that. They'll just be there because there are shortcuts that they can just take because they're not important. Maybe they're going that route. I'm not really sure. But yeah, and how in the world Valda ended up all the way out here as well, I'm not really sure either. And this is the first time we realized Valda was actually still alive. He didn't die when Egwene stabbed him in the back or shoulder and the wolves attacked in season 1. And he doesn't look any worse for the wear at this point. But yeah, it's just weird. And I don't know if Torek even knows that this has already been taken back from them, which is, I guess, is why he was pissed at the beginning anyway, because like he said that we wouldn't be able to hold it if someone wanted to take it back. So that apparently just happened off screen. So it is what it is, I guess. But the show just doesn't explain what it doesn't want to explain, and then just gives us contrivances for when it needs something to happen, what like you've remarked on earlier. And but there are some interesting things in this episode as well. And we get Varen arriving at the White Tower. Now, I mentioned in my mid-season like check-in video that I really like the actress playing Varen a lot. But this Varen is just nothing at all like Varen in the book. She doesn't act like Varen in any similar way to Varen in the books. Like Varen is in the Brown Aja, and the Brown Aja are the ones like they're the historians, and they're always like diving deep into ancient lore and all this stuff. They're like seem to be the keepers of knowledge, and Varen in the books is very like distracted, and in her stories, in her legends, in her books, and she at least appears to be a bit scatterbrained, and she goes off on these like conversational tangents and stuff. And this Varen in the show is very matter of fact, very straightforward, completely different character. So they've taken a very different spin on Varen in the book, which I find very interesting, especially, no spoilers at the moment here, but for those of you watching this who have read this series, you know where this is going with Varen, and I just think this is a very interesting, significant change to her character, or at least how she presents herself to everyone around her. This is not how she acts in the books at all. So it's a bit of a surprise, to be honest. But again, the show Varen, for what they're doing with her, is an interesting character. And one of the things that I do like about the show, I'm disappointed that it's not book Varen, that her personality is very different. But they're using her as the sort of like, she's the Sherlock Holmes, I guess, of the cast at this point. She's the one like trying to puzzle things out and trying to figure out who is who and what everyone is doing and where their loyalties might actually stand, and then who might be involved. And yes, she's probably, even though her personality is very different from her book personality, she is, like you mentioned, Stan, she's very much probably the most Aes Sedai of the Aes Sedai in the show so far. Keeping things to the vest, using her sort of network of brown Aja to funnel information or find information. And she's very interested in what everyone's doing. Varen in the books is as well. You just don't notice it because Varen puts on this very sort of scatterbrained sort of presentation. But so far, she's the one beginning to puzzle out what's going on in the White Tower and why this attention to these two girls in particular. Besides them just being powerful, there's clearly some larger game at play, and she's determined to get to the bottom of it. Whether she's getting to the bottom of it for Moiraine, or whether it's just for her own personal interests, remains to be seen. I'm curious to see where this show's going to take that. But she now, she wants to know about Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine, and really it's just to introduce us back to Tar Valon, back to the White Tower, introduce us to the Brown Aja, introduce us to a couple of members of the Aja that I imagine are going to come into play here in this season at the White Tower for her. One of them, Yasek, I think her name is on the show, is the actress who plays Cho in the Harry Potter films. If I'm recalling that correctly, I'm pretty sure that's the actress who played Cho. But then just a quick little moment just with Varen, and seeing the Brown Aja. And then we're finally off to Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine. Now, they were attacked by Varen at the end of the last episode. And Nynaeve wakes up in the ways, inside the Waygate, in the ways. And she's bound. And Egwene and Elaine are bound next to her. And the other two are unconscious. And she's not just bound in ropes, she's like bound with the power. And Liandrin has shielded all three of them. So even if Nynaeve wanted to channel, she can't. And she realizes that, you attacked us. The Three Oaths don't allow you to do that. And she realizes that Liandrin isn't bound by the Three Oaths anymore. And Liandrin is talking to her about how the Three Oaths came to be in the first place. And she's saying that 1,000 years earlier, there was a king who, a powerful king, who would only abide the Aes Sedai remaining if they swore these oaths. And one of the oaths being you can't use the one power to attack, to kill people, kind of thing. So you can only use it in defense. And he wanted those three oaths. She was telling him, Nynaeve, to basically safeguard civilization from the Aiel. If the Aiel were to just feel they had too much power and wanted to wield that power in ways they shouldn't. And Liandrin, you can tell, is not someone who abides being bound under the will of others. She doesn't tolerate it very well. Liandrin is very, those cheeks aren't like out here. She doesn't have, what's the guy in Family Guy? The giggity. I'm forgetting his name. But she's got a similar cheek structure to him. And she's always, all of her tension is down in her chin and in her bone structure. And I actually like Liandrin in this show. She's one of my favorite things in this show. Again, the character changed very much so from the books. But in the books, she's a one-note villain. So this show has made her a much more complex and interesting character. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with the actress playing her as well. I think she's brought a lot to the role, and the writers are writing to her strengths in this role. And I do like the interesting dynamic between Liandrin and Nynaeve, where Liandrin is taking an interest in Nynaeve for whatever her purposes might be. And Nynaeve realizes, you're not recruiting me to join your Red Aja because of how powerful I am. You're recruiting me to join the Forsaken, the Shamael, the Dark Friends. And Nynaeve is kind of horrified at that thought. But then we're back with High Lady Suroth, and this is where we get our follow-up to the opening, the cold open, where she meets with a Shamael, and she's upset because, she's been punished. She's you can tell that she's distraught by her nails being cut off, and she's angry at Shamael as well, because she's basically telling him, this is your fault. You're the one who made me go there for whoever, these wolf person or whatever you're after there. And I'm now being punished for it. And she's like, we need to let's kill Turok and just basically do what we need to do without anyone in our way. And Ishamael is just kind of calmly looking at her and says, your reputation of being very hot-headed and getting yourself in trouble seems to be well earned at this place. And he kind of admonishes her and puts her in her place and warns her that, if you kill Turok, that will bring the attention of the Empress, and that we cannot have that. It would disrupt what we're trying to do here. And he's telling her, he takes her hand, and like I mentioned, she tries to pull away, and he won't let her at first. And then he releases her. And, it's a little reminder, I guess, to show you how distraught she is. But, hopefully they'll actually mention the societal impact among the Shan-Chan in having those nails cut off and her, basically humiliated like that. But he tells her that the last battle, Tarmangaidan, is going to be won right here in Falm. And there'll be a battle in the sky, and the dragon reborn will join us. He's basically telling her the dragon's going to come to our side. And that he has a gift for her that should be arriving very shortly. Which you can then put two and two together and realize, since we know from the previous episode, Leandrin is working for Ishamael, then it must be she's bringing the girls there at Ishamael's request to presumably give to Surath. And then we're back to Perrin. And Perrin sneaks out at night in, I guess all the White Cloaks went to bed. I don't know. There's nobody outside. And he goes up to the cage where the Aiel woman is. And she looks at him. And, he's letting her know. It's can you walk? I'll let you out. And she's like, why are you doing this to me? One, Wetlander cages me and another frees me, trying to figure him out. And this is Avienda. So he kind of helps her out, and he's like, we have to get out of here. We've got to run. She introduces herself, Avienda, Farde is Mai. She's maiden of the spear. Was it the Tarded Sept? I can't remember the exact, what her Sept and clan are offhand. And, but he's like, we have to get out of here. And then all of a sudden, White Cloaks are everywhere. And then it's Dane Bornhold we saw earlier, now decked out in his White Cloak armor with a bunch of White Cloaks, and they're surrounding Perrin and Avienda. And Avienda looks at Perrin and kind of smiles, and she's like, Perrin Ibarra, do you like to dance? And she veils herself. And then she just goes to town on the White Cloaks. And yes, an enjoyable scene. This is our second time now in the TV series seeing an Aiel, a Maiden of the Spear, fight. Though this is the first time it's an actual Aiel woman herself, because in the cold open of episode 7, the Blood Snow scene, that was Tigraine, Rand's mother, who's not actually ethnic Aiel from the Threefold Land, but went and joined them and became one of them. But this is the first actual Aiel, born and raised in the Threefold Land, that we're seeing a Maiden of the Spear fight. And again, generally a very well done fight scene. Yes. And one of the things that was mentioned in the episode prior to this was how dangerous she was and how many people she had taken out earlier just trying to cage her. So Dane Bornhold's plan of attack is, they've got her, they were in a circle, and it's like, everyone will attack all at once. We'll all rush in at the same time, because if we go one-on-one, she'll just rip us all apart one at a time. So his plan is, let's all attack. Which, the problem with that is, when a maiden veils herself and then goes to town with her spears, she's a wrecking ball, and she's constantly moving. She's not staying in one place to be surrounded, and she's not fighting defense, because the Aiel don't fight defense. Aiel are on the offense. That's their fighting style. They'll take it to you, and they'll just keep cutting through you and cutting through you and cutting through you until either the last one of you drops or they finally drop. So she's just like, we're working her way around these people, just, brutalizing them, breaking bones and arms, and, killing and stabbing and doing all sorts of stuff. Perrin is trying his best. If you want an analogy, to some degree, go to Iron Man 2 when we finally see Black Widow fight for the first time when she's with, is it Happy, I think? They come into the building, and he starts fighting the security guard in the lobby, and Natasha just like goes down the hallway, just like wrecking shop on every other guard in the place while he's fighting that one person. That's kind of what this was like. Perrin's doing his best over there, but Avienda is pretty much taking most of them out. The only one who gives her any trouble at all is Dane Bornhold, because makes sense. He's going to be kind of an important character going forward, especially in Perrin's arc. So making him a formidable opponent makes sense for the show, and he should be, in general, a formidable opponent. But Avienda pretty much subdues him as well, flips him down, takes his axe away from him, and she's ready to kill him, and Perrin tells her to stop. And Perrin's like, because Perrin at this point, it doesn't make any sense, and it's very plot armory in that, they pretty much just killed just about all the other White Cloaks there, so what's one more? Not that big of a deal. But for whatever reason, because, again, this is Dane Bornhold, and he's important in Perrin's whole story arc, so he's got plot armor at this point in the story. So they can't kill him. So Perrin is like, he gave you water, so you at least owe him his life back. And then she's like, okay, and then they get out of there. And they leave him, and they run away. And Dane had seen Perrin's eyes turn yellow in this whole fight, and this is where Dane gets a look at him, and he's like, what are you, kind of thing. So just as Valda was freaked out by Perrin's yellow eyes in season 1, now Dane Bornhold is kind of freaked out by it here. And as far as Dane is concerned, Perrin has killed White Cloaks, and he's got yellow eyes, so he's got to be a dark friend. So Dane is going to be, for those of you who haven't read the books, Dane is going to be a thorn in Perrin's side going forward. Yeah, and I don't know what happened to Valda either. We saw Valda earlier. Is Valda asleep? Didn't wake up with the fighting? Or has finding no one to put to the question, has Valda already moved on somewhere else at this point? Again, who knows? Valda was just there because it was a White Cloak that would have recognized Perrin, and then that gave Perrin the opportunity to hide, so then Perrin could hear Valda say Falm to let Perrin know to go to Falm. Again, it seemed like he just kind of popped up for a plot contrivance and then was gone again. And this is the parts of the show that is frustrating. This very clunky amateurish storytelling. Because there are better ways to do this, smarter ways to do this, than what they're doing here. And again, where the hell Valda went, who knows? Where the hell Elias went, who knows? Where did all the wolves go? Who knows? But we didn't need them because this was Avienda's scene. And I will say, my boy Gaul had his introduction in book 3 taken from him and given to Avienda. Not happy. I didn't get my stone dog, Gaul. And I'm now worried we're not going to get Gaul in this TV show at all. And if we are not getting Gaul, I am not going to be a happy book reader. Because in book 3, it is Gaul who's in a cage that Perrin finds and frees. And Gaul and him get attacked by White Cloaks, and they kill some. And I think Gaul runs off at that point. Thanks Perrin and runs off. And we don't see Gaul again until at the Stone of Tyr in book 3, when then Gaul kind of becomes sort of a companion to Perrin. And he's kind of a supporting character in Perrin's story arc from that point forward after the Stone of Tyr. But this is where we're supposed to be introduced to Gaul, and we had no Gaul. We have Aviendha here instead. And I know Bane and Chiad are going to be in the show later, so I'm assuming that somewhere in the next couple of episodes, we're going to... Aviendha might lead Perrin to Bane and Chiad. So, but I am really worried that I'm not going to get Gaul in this TV show. And that's going to throw off the dynamic. If it's just going to be Bane and Chiad only, with Perrin and not Gaul as well. Because that's going to throw off the whole... Perrin's whole story arc with Perrin and Fael and everything that this whole journey that they go on. In the books, Fael is in this same scene, though we don't know who she is yet, and Perrin doesn't know who Fael is in the books yet. But Fael is in that scene in book 3, where Gaul is in the cage outside, and Perrin goes out and frees him, because Perrin keeps seeing this woman with this dark hair, who's kind of intently watching Perrin since they arrived. And Perrin is kind of enamored and fixated and puzzled by her, and he keeps noticing her. And no Fael at this point in this show. I know we're getting Fael, but I don't know if we're going to get her this season or not. I would like to. I would like to hope that maybe some hunters for the horn show up in the final episode or something, and we get our Fael introduction, but I'm not really expecting that. But again, this scene introduced Gaul. It kind of set up the soon-to-be introduced Fael, and neither one. And that's the thing, yes. Do this here, Stan. Yes, they forgot about the Great Hunt, so maybe that's why Fael is not there. Yeah, so far, there was one brief mention. I don't know if it was episode 2 or 3, somewhere in one of those early episodes. When Rand is walking through the foregate, there's a gleeman announcing that a new hunt for the horn is being called, and people are getting ready to leave to go to... I forget where you're supposed to gather for the hunt. I forget the name of the place offhand. But Rand learns later, or at least Lady Anvare, Moiraine's sister, thinks it's a ploy to just empty out all the refugees in the foregate. But there was just that one reference that the Great Hunt is being called again for the horn. But there's been no follow-up mention of it, and we haven't seen anyone traveling on the road anywhere on their way. I can't remember. Is it Ilion or something like that, where they gather to take the oath to hunt for the horn? But we haven't yet. No follow-up on that of any kind. Just that one brief mention from a gleeman who seemed to have a more book-accurate gleeman cloak than Tom Merrilin. And who should be here in season 2 because he's in book 2, but it's not in this season either. So hopefully Tom Merrilin is back next season. Because in book 2, Rand runs into Tom in the city of Carian. But again, this Carian plot is almost unrecognizable from the Carian book plot. Okay, so where was I at? All right, so after Perrin and Aviendha, we're back to Rand and Moiraine again. And now they've arrived back in the city of Carian, and they go to the Damodred estate, where, Lady Anvare lives. And this kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. They arrive, and we have Barthanes Damodred there, which in the show is Anvare's son. Now, if you watched my season 2, mid-season check-in, when I was going over the whole Rand and Carian stuff, I mentioned that the Carian has a king, and the king had sent Rand an invitation to a party. And this other lord, who's a bitter rival of the king's, also sent Rand an invitation in the book. And that bitter rival is this guy, Barthanes, and who's Barthanes Damodred, is Moiraine's relative. Because House Damodred used to be the king Alamis Damodred, or Laman Damodred. And that's the one the Aiel crossed the spine of the world 20 years earlier to come and kill, which is how Rand ended up being born on the slopes of the Dragon Mount, was during the tail end of that war. So, but here in the show, Barthanes seems to be this nice kid. He's Lady Anvir's son. They've gender swapped the monarch of Carian. Kept the same name apparently for the monarch, but it's a queen instead of a king now, and they're going to have Barthanes is going to be marrying the queen. So he's in town basically as they begin to prepare for the eventual wedding. And at least they're presenting him as a seemingly good son, a good person. Now, I don't know if he's going to be like his book character at all, and suffer the same, let's say, fate the book character suffers. But I'm curious. Again, another character who's just written very, very different here in this TV show, at least at this point. But again, it's just an introduction to him. But, Lady Anvir and Barthanes are looking at Moiraine and Rand, seeing how disheveled they are. And Barthanes is like, you must be her warder. And Rand's like, basically, because Rand doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut. Rand's like, no, I'm not a warder at all. And this is where we go to where I think it's a reminder, or at least an indication, that Moiraine has been shielded and not stilled. Because they look to Moiraine, okay, well then who is this kid with you? Who's this guy with you? And Moiraine just kind of hesitant, and she says, this is Rand. And to me, that indicates that she's still bound by the 3 oaths, so she can't lie. So she gives the simplest answer to the question, which is just Rand's name, as a way to get out of having to give information she doesn't want to give. So again, I'm convinced that Moiraine is shielded, that Ishamael tied off a very intricate shield that she doesn't know how to undo or unravel. And so my guess, because she has to be unshielded at some point, because there are things that are going to happen once they get Moiraine back to her actual book plot at some point where she needs the one power. So I'm wondering, either Rand is going to figure out how to untie that shield and give her powers back, or for all I know, Lanfear is going to do it just for the hell of it. Just to see what Moiraine does and just to piss off Ishamael. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. One of those two ways is the way Moiraine will get her powers back. But that seemed to indicate to me that she is just shielded and not indeed stilled. And basically she wants a fresh meal and clothes for Rand, and she wants to basically wash up and leave it at that. She doesn't want questions. And then we're back to Verin, because again, this show can't sit with anybody for any decent amount of time. But Verin is back in the tower, and Verin goes to meet Sheriam, the Mistress of Novices, in Sheriam's office, because Verin has been looking for Egwene and Nynaeve and can't find them. And she tells Sheriam, it's like, they're not in their rooms, they're not in their studies, they're not anywhere in the White Tower. They seem to be missing. And the daughter heir of Handor seems to be missing as well. And then Sheriam looks through her sort of ledger and then goes, Elaine went back to Caemlyn for a special visit for her brother Gawain's name day. And she took Egwene and Nynaeve with her to show her where she's from. And then Sheriam is looking at that, tells Verin this, but Sheriam seems puzzled by that information even being there in her ledger, as if why don't I remember writing that kind of thing? So Verin then asks about a book on the meditations on the kindling flame. It's which she already knows at this point Sheriam has. And then Sheriam says, I have that. I can give that to you. So they leave. This is basically a ploy on Verin's part to get Sheriam out of her office. So the Jessica, I think her name is, Jessica, Sedai, the brown Aja we were introduced earlier, kind of sneaks in and starts going through the ledger real quick to see what you can find. And then we cut to Varen's, the brown Aja's sort of study. She's recounting to Varen what she found. Because apparently Jessica has like that sort of photographic memory. She sees something, she knows it and remembers it exactly. And I kind of got the impression that she recopied Shariam's handwriting, because I can't imagine she just stole a page out of her ledger. And she's showing her how this part here, where she's writing how Elaine went to visit Camelin, it looks like the handwriting is slightly off, like it was written unnaturally slow. And then Yasuka's wondering, is this someone trying to mimic Shariam's writing? And is that why it's a bit off? And then Varen realizes, no, it's like Shariam did write that. She remembered doing this. But, could someone use a compulsion weave, make Shariam write something and not really know what she's writing? And then they realize that, if that's true, there's at least one sister in the White Tower has gone to the dark. And it means the Black Aja, that's been an Aja that's been rumored for perhaps centuries, it means the Black Aja is real and in the White Tower. So again, I generally like what they're doing with Varen. Varen is sort of like the sleuth. Like I said, she's like Sherlock Holmes, and her team of detective brown Aja Sedai are kind of just slowly beginning to uncover this plot that's afoot in the White Tower. So, this is interesting stuff, at least, because again, as book readers, you kind of know in general what's happening there and where this is all going. So I'm just curious to see how it's going to play out in the TV show. And right now, they're at least doing the setup work for the Black Aja stuff here in this episode. And Varen is being used to kind of introduce this whole sort of angle to the audience who hasn't read the books. So again, this is one of the things that I actually liked about this episode. They are beginning to advance the plot forward, beginning to let the reader know, the audience know more about what's actually going on, because again, book readers know, but the audience who's never read the books, the showrunners at this point in writing season 2 seem to have realized, okay, we're in the second half of the season. We have to start like telling the audience this stuff, because this is important for them to begin to know now to set up what's coming. And so it's good to see that we're, getting things like that, because I've been waiting to see when the Black Aja is kind of going to begin to come into play. And just an observation, Shariam seemed quite deferential towards Varen. Yeah, and this is an interesting thing about the White Tower that they haven't really gotten into too much in the books yet. You do have some people who hold like positions of authority, like Shariam is the mistress of novices, because Shariam is not a slouch when it comes to wielding the one power. She's pretty powerful herself. But there is this sort of unwritten hierarchy in the White Tower that the stronger you are in the one power, the more voice you have in what goes on in the one tower, the more pull and authority you have among the other sisters. So at least in the show, Shariam does seem very deferential to Varen. And I don't know if that's meant to be Varen is more powerful than her in the show, or if the show is going a different route and that sort of higher status is held more in terms of age and time in the tower, in not necessarily their power level. I don't know. This is, again, an area where the show hasn't really gotten into that internal politicking of the tower all that much. They've been just focusing on a couple of different things, but again, partly because they just don't spend enough time at these places in these scenes. So hopefully this is something that they will clarify. But that all depends upon how much the show's interested in its book reader part of its audience, as opposed to it's like the non-book readers. Because I don't know which of those two camps is the majority of the people watching this show. I would think it's probably book readers, just in general. But I have no idea, if what percentage of the audience doesn't know the story at all, so they don't know what they don't know. So, and they don't know that a kind of significant change might be playing out here in the tower. So, again, Varen is just now stepping into the heart of the story, into being a player in the story rather than sitting on the sidelines. So, we'll kind of see where the show takes that sort of dynamic in the White Tower, in terms of, is it how much power you can wield that gives you more authority, or is it just tenure? So we'll see. Time will tell. Hold on here. Topping off my beer. So then we are back with Liandrin. And Liandrin opens up the Wait Gate and steps out, and we see High Lady Suroth. High Lady Suroth is no longer wearing this sort of face mask thing ever since she's been, like, sort of humiliated and, like, kicked down a peg. She's had her mask off, and she's lost her thingies, her nails. So she's, like, you see her, like, sort of shaved head on the side. She's got sort of like a kind of a mohawky sort of thing, which is the hairstyle in the books. That is pretty book accurate, too, in terms of how Suroth looks. So Liandrin is there, and Suroth is, like, kind of pissed off, like, you should have been here hours ago. But, Leandrin's like, the Wait Gates are, you can't control the Wait Gates. They're temperamental. And then she hands over the girls. We have, each girl is out unconscious, slumped over horses, and they're handed over to Shan guards. And Liandrin and Suroth kind of, like, sort of banter at each other. They don't like each other. Liandrin is kind of repulsed and incensed by the Damane and how women who can channel are treated. And Suroth is just completely contemptuous for women channelers. And, she's telling her that, when your usefulness, Liandrin, is done, maybe I'll put the collar on you myself. And Leandrin's like, well, your usefulness is going to be done before mine, so I'll be the one who makes you kneel when the time comes. So, you can tell they're setting up this dynamic where these two just really despise each other and want to dominate each other. And then, as she's leaving, Liandrin stops and turns in front of the Way Gate, kind of says something under her breath to Suroth, and then slyly, like, flicks a little weave and takes away Nynaeve's shield. Takes away unshields the girls' one power. So, and then wakes them up. And actually unties Nynaeve's ropes even around her. And then steps through the Way Gate and closes it. And then the girls are awake. Nynaeve can't channel because she can only channel when she's, like, really, really angry. And here she's just kind of startled and not angry enough to channel yet. So Elaine channels and, like, sends, like, a bolt of energy attacking the Damane coming and the guards coming for them. They get up and start running away. And then the Damane attack, and the Gwen stops and raises, like, a shield, a weave that's like a shield, to deflect the Damane attacks. And Nynaeve and Elaine escape, but Egwene is captured and bound by weaves and taken by the Shan. And again, a really quick scene, just with them a couple of seconds. And we cut to Perrin and Aviendha now. Because again, bounce in this episode. And this is where we get Perrin and Aviendha kind of sitting and relaxing. I think they're eating. And she's telling Perrin about the threefold land and about, it's like a test for them, and because of their like sin, and they don't even remember what their sin was. She's telling him a little bit and how she has tow towards him now because, he freed her. And he's asking her, like, she said, I'll share my water with you. And Perrin's like, well, I don't know about that. And she realizes, like, no, I'm not talking about being lovers, though. I'm open to it if you want, just to kind of play with him. But then she's telling him, like, she's crossed the spine of the world because she's searching for the Karakarn, the chief of chiefs of her people. But for now, she's going to go where Perrin goes because she has tow to Perrin. She owes him a debt. So she owes him her water. So she's going to go with Perrin until he feels that tow is fulfilled. And so he wants to head to Falma because that's where, Loyal and everyone has been taken. And then we're back to Nynaeve and Elaine. And now, somehow, the big caravan that had left Atuan's mill with all these people who were taken finally arrives at Falm. And this is where all these other prisoners that they've been taking in towns, apparently, they finally arrive. And Nynaeve and Elaine have gotten clothes from somewhere else, and they're just walking in, pretending to be the back part of this caravan just to get into the city there. And then they duck into an alley, and they're trying to figure out what the hell to do. Neither one knows what the hell is going on. Elaine figures out that they're in Falm because she's a future queen, so she has to be able to recognize places. And but she knows that these soldiers are clearly invaders, outsiders. And she's trying to tell Nynaeve, settle down, calm down. You're so hot-headed, you're going to get us caught or killed. And then there's this big man, like, who sees them and follows them into the alley and attacks the two of them and knocks them out. And then we're back to the White Tower again, because again, this episode just can't sit with any of these characters for more than like 30, 45 seconds. And again, this is one of the frustrating parts about this show, is it really needs to find its rhythm in how to divvy up its time in a better way than it's been doing. And yes, a really good observation, Stan, about Avienda. They're sitting right by a lake, and Avienda is just calm and casual and relaxed as can be. Now, a puddle is a lot of water to the Aiel, and she would be fascinated by a puddle. So for her to not even notice or remark or wonder about this body of water right by her is just, and if we're going to be going to the Threefold Land next season, you kind of want to have you actually gave yourself a setting to set up teaching the audience about how little water the Aiel ever really see in the desert, how precious it is to them. So Avienda would be sort of both fascinated and terrified of this big body of water just sitting right by them. And doesn't even say anything about it, doesn't seem to even notice it. She's just casual as can be, which again is kind of a big miss on the show's part, to set up an opportunity to teach you more about the Aiel and then just not do it, which is just bizarre. But like I said, we're back in the White Tower with Varen again, and Varen comes across Leandrin returning to the White Tower. And Varen's trying to feel Leandrin out as well. It's because one of the things Varen wanted to know in the last Varen scene was, okay, I want to know everyone who's left this tower around the same time as the girls. And obviously Leandrin was one of them. So she's talking to Leandrin, kind of feel her out. She tells her, it's hey, I hear about these two new novices and how powerful they are, and I wanted to kind of talk to them, but they're not here. They went away with Elaine to Caemlyn. And Leandrin's oh, really? Because I heard a royal Caemlyn sort of group of travelers were attacked on the road. I wonder if the girls are in trouble, kind of thing. We need to go tell the keeper right away. And Leandrin takes off up the stairs, and Varen is kind of like looking at her, like with this, like studying her, and before she follows. And then that's it. That's it for them for now. And then back to Moiraine. Again, bounce, 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 back and forth. And in this, particularly here in this season 2, so much. So we have Moiraine is in her room trying to wipe the blood off her. Her sister Anvair comes in, and Anvair is actually kind of surprised at how out of sorts Moiraine is, because, you know, she's like, you've always known, Moiraine, what you needed to do every moment of our lives growing up together. You've always known what you were doing and what you wanted to do, what you needed to do. So what's happened? Who is this kid, and why are you, have you both ended up in clearly a pretty bad predicament? And Moiraine looks like she's about to tell her, but then she kind of changes her mind. And she just tells her Anvair that Rand needs protecting. And what he needs protection from could destroy him and me and you and this entire city if I don't make the right choice now. And Anvair kind of talks to her and tells her a little anecdote from when she was growing up that seems to give Moiraine an idea, right? And then we cut to Rand, or what appears to be Rand. Now, Moiraine had told Rand, do not go to sleep, no matter what. Lanfear will get you in your sleep. She could pull you into Telarian Rod, which is this sort of world of dreams, and Lanfear is very powerful there. So you have to stay awake for now. And we cut to Rand, and of course Rand's asleep in his bed, or at least it appears to be Rand asleep in his bed. And then we see a Shamael climb into bed with him, and Shamael's lying there, and he's just like caressing Rand on the face. And then he's like looking at Rand, and then he kind of laughs, and he's like, Lanfear, what are you doing? And then Rand turns into Lanfear, and you realize it's actually just Lanfear projecting, and not Rand at all. And Lanfear's just kind of messing with Ishamael here. And they're kind of talking back and forth, two of them, kind of, again, feeling each other out. And, you know, Ishamael starts talking about, you know, why he's the favorite among all the Chosen. Because he's the only one of the Chosen who actually believes in the dark. And the rest of you don't, really. You're just out for yourselves. But I believe in this. But what I want to do, and he says he wants to, I think I wrote it down here. He wants to stop the wheel completely. So basically, he wants to help the Dark One break free of its cage and basically put an end to everything. And Lanfear starts rattling off, okay, well, so I know why you woke me up, why you released me, because Moghedien is just insane, and Grendel is this, and the boys, meaning the male Forsaken, are useless. They couldn't do anything if they tried. And interesting, and you know, and it's a very interesting scene. This is our first time really seeing two of the Forsaken together and getting to see the dynamic that sort of takes place in their sort of inner circle. Because this is one of the things about the being on the Dark One's side is there's never trust. No matter what, there's never, ever trust. And everyone wants to climb that ladder higher than everyone else. And everyone who's higher on the ladder is always trying to puzzle out what the people below them are trying to do, and which one is the one that's going to stab me in the back, and all this stuff. So they're always kind of like, it's a game, but a very dangerous game that they're playing with each other here, couched in polite conversation. And Lanfear even says, are you afraid I'm going to betray you? And Shamael like steps to her, and he's like, are you? And she's like, of course, and laughs at him. But she kind of laughs as though she's just kind of playing that off. But again, it's been a long time coming, getting to Forsaken in a scene together, and a really, really interesting dynamic. The two of these actor and actresses, they play very well off each other. And I would say, well, yeah, I don't want to give spoilers away, but so far they're setting up the Forsaken part of this whole plot. They're doing a good job here. You know, I've been a little disappointed in how so casual everyone else seems to be around Ishamael. You know, I mean, he is a Forsaken, and that should absolutely terrify anyone who's not a Forsaken, and even scare some of the other Forsaken. But one of the puzzling things about this show, and it's maybe he just hasn't been like high Forsaken here, even though he does seem to go around saying that he's the father of lies and all this stuff. But I've been just puzzled at how little fear people have of this man. So this was a much better dynamic between him and Lanfear, because we have two very, very powerful people, and there's still this sort of cat and mouse and like game going on here, where they're kind of like just poking for weaknesses, trying to see what gets under each other's skin, trying to puzzle out what their plans are. But again, just pretty nicely written, done, acted very well, gets to the point, gets the dynamic of their kind of relationship across. And then they kind of like conjure an image of Rand waking up in the bed, and they're both, this fake Rand is just kind of looking at them, and they're kind of like eyeing him like they're ready to eat him. And but again, they're just kind of setting the dynamic, and it's kind of reminding the audience that Ishamael has his wants and needs with Rand, and Lanfear has very different wants and needs with Rand as well. So it's an interesting sort of dream Tellarian ride moment where they've just conjured an image of Rand, and they're both kind of looking at him, and you can tell both are thinking about what they want to use this kid for. And Ishamael is telling her, he's like about the presumably Gwen and Nynaeve and Gwen. And he's like, one girl craves power and the other fears it. And as far as these other boys go, it's like Mat has been mine since birth. Mat was born mine, I think he says. And Perrin will soon be more wolf than man. And I do have to say, this shows clear, absolute, utter disdain for the character of Mat Cawthon. Continues unabated in this TV show. I am convinced there is somebody working on this TV show that does not like the character of Mat, because he is a very, very, very mistreated character in this, as far as this show goes. He's not even a poorly written character. Somebody just does not like this character and is sort of positioning Mat to not become the Mat in the books, but to become a villain. So we'll see. I hope they actually don't do that. They're certainly setting that up, that Mat's going to basically turn to the dark side and become a dark friend, but that is not Mat's path in the books at all. Mat is a fan favorite for a reason. One of the most likable characters in the books. So, but hopefully next season, if it is indeed book 4, The Shadow Rising, the Mat that we get for the whole rest of the book series, once he goes through that red doorframe Terangriel, which has to happen before he goes to Rudian. Once that happens, then hopefully we should finally get past the whole Shatter Logoth early section of Mat, where Mat is just kind of in this holding pattern in these early books. And then we can finally get to Mat being able to be Mat in this TV show the way Mat finally gets to be Mat in the books. But we'll see. But this Mat was born mine remark is this show is continuing to position Matt as inherently evil, which not a fan. As a book reader, not a fan of this route they're going with this character at all. So I'm hoping it's just these people on the dark side just completely rereading Matt, and not that this is who show Matt's going to be. But, that's kind of... This is the dynamic that is in this scene, and that's the comment made about Matt and not happy. But we'll see. Again, Matt and Min weren't even in this episode at all, so this was our only Matt reference. Donald Finn, I guess he's had it pretty easy coming into this show this season, because they haven't given the poor guy much to do at all. So 3 more episodes to go. I hope Matt gets a whole hell of a lot in those 3 episodes. If he's going to get his book 2 finale, he's going to have some pretty significant stuff coming up. And I'm looking forward to Donald Finn getting to do that and getting his moment to finally shine in this character. But they're certainly not setting him up to go that route in this TV show at this point. But after this, Ishamael is woken up by a servant, and Ishamael is brought to High Lord Turok, because Turok is like, okay, who the hell are you? You're not Shan Chan. You're not even any of these other people from our side of the world. You're not from our place at all. Who are you? Where did you come from? And what have you done to rise so high in favor inside our empire? Because Turok is like, he's had enough of this mystery. And pretty much Ishamael's like, and Turok is like, you're the one who sort of led us to these prophecies that told us it was time to come over here and reclaim our land. So, like, who are you, and how do you know this, and what are you doing? And Ishamael's like, no, I'm not worthy of having interpreted those prophecies. Our Empress, of the Empress in the Core of the 9 Moons was the one who, did all of that. I'm just a humble servant who just doesn't even remember where I'm from, because I left my home when I was such a young boy. And I've just, ended up in your land and accepted by you people. He's just kind of play it coy. But then Ishamael's like, I think he says, I don't know, does he tell? I can't remember. I didn't write it down. I can't remember if he says to Turok that he has a gift for Turok as well. I'm not sure. Or I don't think that was that. I think that was earlier when he gave him the horn. But that was it. Just Turok kind of feeling Ishamael out. And I think, Turok would have probably demanded a bit more of an answer than that. But the scene, again, was a very quick, short scene, because time to bounce to the next character. And then we are back to Nynaeve and Elaine. And they wake up in this bed in this strange room and don't know what the hell happened to them. And in walks the man who had attacked them, and a woman. And the woman is, we learn, is I think Rima Sidai of the Yellow Aja, and the man who had grabbed them was her warder. And the Aes Sedai tells them, it's like, the High Lady Suroth has your description out. She wants you, and they have people hunting for you all over the city. And, Rima is scared, because she's like, do you see what these lunatics are doing to women who can channel in this place? And they're trying to then figure out what their next move is. But again, very quick scene just to set up that, okay, they weren't captured again. They're with an Aes Sedai. And then, boom, we're now back to Egwene. And Suroth basically brings Egwene to High Lord Turok. Egwene is like being dragged behind Suroth by servants. She's got this sort of golden hood over her. They take it off. And one of the, I think the Suldam walks up to Egwene and with a little half collar and puts it on Egwene's throat, and then it expands all the way around and then expands down into this sort of harness. And then a tendril of power comes off of the collar to the soldam, the bracelet the soldam is wearing, like linking the collar and the bracelet with the one power. And then the soldam puts a physical chain attached to the back of the collar on Egwene as well. And we cut away, and that's just seeing Egwene getting collared. Now, I did not like this redesign for the show of the whole collar and whole chest piece, but the way they're doing it in the show, I like a lot better, because it's still just a little collar that you can quickly put on someone's neck, which thankfully they've kept that part, and then it just expands out, because there's, a particular scene coming later on down the road that involves a collar being put on somebody, and if it was that big clunky thing, then this would be impossible. But the way the show is doing it here, it doesn't, it makes much more logistical sense. It fits the logistics of the book and gives it this sort of unique look the show wants to have for whatever reason. So, I just wanted to miss your comment here. I didn't get the timing of this. Why wasn't Ishii just released from the Eye of the World when the Shanshan landed? See, this is something the show has not made clear as well, because Shamael was appearing in the Rand streams and Perrin and Matt streams, and again, a lot more in the book than in season 1. There was just a couple of moments where he was sort of the face with the burning eyes, presenting himself, I supposedly, as Balzamon, the Dark One, but it was really a Shamael. So I don't know how he would have any physical presence, like you said, in the Shanshan's lands, like if he was bound and only just released, because that was only 5-6 months max. I can't imagine a Shamael showed up across the sea and in just a couple of months rose up to this position he's got. So yes, doesn't make any sense if you actually stop. And I didn't even stop and think about that myself, but that's a very good point, Stan. Like, how the hell would he have this presence and position among the Shanshan if he's been in prison? And just a sort of an impression of him can touch people's dreams prior to that. Until he's physically released at the Eye of the World at the end of season 1. So, yeah, again, logic and reason don't really seem to have much presence in this TV show adaptation. They don't seem all that interested in it when they don't have a need for it. And then you end up with things like this, like you mentioned. And I'm surprised that I didn't catch it, but I didn't. It's like, yeah, how the hell does he have this position in the Shanshan if the guy has been just only physically released a few months earlier? So, very good point. And I don't know that the show is even interested in an answer. But we're back to Rand and Moiraine again. And basically Moiraine has decided, okay, we're staying here in the Damodred household. We're staying in Carian because she's decided that she wants Rand to play along with Lanfear. Because she meets with Rand and she's like, look, you've been with this Forsaken for months now, and she hasn't killed you. She hasn't tried to kill you. So clearly she wants something else. And Rand is like, well, the way she acted, she wanted to be with me. She wanted us to be lovers. And, and even Rand was like, and to be honest, some of what we felt, I think it was real. So Moraine's like, basically, okay. And this is the part that I don't remember this in the books at all. I don't remember if this was true in the books. I'd have to go back and look. But Moiraine tells Rand that in all, no matter how many different versions of the past that you read about, one commonality was Lanfear appears in them, and Lanfear and the dragon were lovers. Like Lews Therin and Lanfear were lovers until Luz Theron met the woman who would then become his wife, and spurned Lanfear. And Lanfear was so heartbroken, she swore an oath to the Dark One to help him get Luz Theron back. So I don't remember if that's the case in the books. I'd have to go back and try to find where that might have been talked about. Because again, I did just reread the first 5 books in the last month, but it's been a few years since I did that full reread of the story, So I don't remember. But in the TV show, at least, Lanfear isn't bad because she's bad. She's bad because a man was bad to her, and then just because a man mistreated her, she became evil to win him back or whatever. That's what the show's going with. And again, that might be the way it was in the books, but I don't remember that. I'd have to go back. So I don't know if this is book accurate at all. Yeah. And this is, again, very out of character for Moiraine. So Moiraine yeeting Rand out of Forsaken with no plan, no preparation, and just hoping for the best. Because Moiraine can't help because she's shielded. And yeah, so on the one hand, I guess you could look at it in this sense. Moiraine is shielded. She can't touch the one power. So they're at Lanfear's mercy. Rand can channel, yes, but can he channel in any kind of significant way when he needs to, in the way he needs to at any given moment? She doesn't know if that's the case. And so I guess from Moiraine's point of view, until we're able to legitimately be able to defend ourselves from her in any realistic way, play along with her. Now, this is a pretty big gamble to take with the Dragon Reborn, to just throw him out of Forsaken and hope for the best, and hope he doesn't get lured in and lured to the dark side and decides this go around or this turning of the wheel, he's just going to help the Dark One destroy everything. But I guess you could look at it as right now, powerless Moiraine is kind of desperate. And in a sense, it's a smart play in the fact if you can kind of manipulate one of the Forsaken to not be on your side, but not really be against Rand, so that Rand will have some protection against Shamael if a Shamael makes a move. So, Moiraine's rolling the dice at this point, which TV show Moiraine doesn't really seem to have much choice but to do that at all either, because she's powerless. She can't do anything right now. And this does, the Aes Sedai manipulative part of an Aes Sedai, this does let her kind of keep her claws into Rand herself, keep Rand close, keep Rand looking to her for guidance and answers. So it's still Moiraine being an Aes Sedai in terms of the manipulation and calculation. It's Moiraine being a daughter of the city of Carian, whatever you pronounce it, where the home of Daes Dammar, the Great Game, so that Moiraine grew up with before she went to the White Tower, and then learned and even masterful level of the Great Game in the White Tower itself. So it is Moiraine kind of using the skills she has left, which is playing the Daes Dammar game. And Rand's a weapon, a tool at this point, until she can get her powers back. I guess from TV show Moiraine's point of view, this is her only play. So she's going to play it. But she does also understand that, she's risking the lives of her family and this entire city. If she plays it wrong, Carian is not in for a good time. And, let's just say if you watched my mid-season check-in and I walked you through everything that happened as a result of Rand coming to Carian in the book, it doesn't bode well for where this is going to go in this TV show for the city. I will just say that for those watching this who haven't read the books. And that makes you question the rescue from Lanfear to begin with, but I'll stop being nitpicky. And yeah, that's another thing as well. I mean, Moiraine certainly didn't take the time to figure out what was going on. You know, would Moiraine have, okay, Rand is with her. I think that's Lanfear. Would Moiraine just burst in and just like attack Lanfear and like slit her throat and run? Or would Moiraine hang back a day or two and kind of see what the dynamic is, see what's happening? See, has she lost Rand? And is she going to be slicing two throats in that room? Or, you know, so again, because this is entirely made up story, and this Moiraine is a bit different from book Moiraine. Like most of these characters in this TV show are different from their book characters, except for Elaine. Elaine Trican seems to be the one character that they're generally writing. Again, she's gotten very little screen time, but what little they've given her, she generally reminds me of the book character the most. Elaine does, but so it's the thing you can easily question is, does it make sense for Moiraine to just burst in and just slice Lanfear's throat like that and run with Rand? Or would Moiraine have hung back and watched? Because clearly, you know, her sister knows that she's looking for this kid, so which means she knows that her sister is aware of this kid at least. She didn't realize that they met each other until one of these scenes in this episode. But I imagine, you know, Moiraine still has those contacts herself, no matter how much they're her sisters. Some of them are going to be still loyal to her as well. And Moiraine would have talked to enough people to find out what's been going on between Rand and Lanfear for the past few months. So you could take it either way. You know, is Moiraine just being rash, or is Moiraine just that afraid, having no powers? The only thing in the moment, she's like, I have to get this kid away from her. So it's hard to say. Would Moiraine with powers have acted this way, or would she have held back because she would have had recourse to take some one power related action if the need arose? So again, I don't know if this show has any interest in exploring those things, because that's a conversation that I would love for Lan to have with Moiraine at some point, so we can kind of get inside Moiraine's head here, because this season, they've been deliberately like just keeping everyone, characters in show included, like completely outside of Moiraine's head, unaware of what Moiraine is even up to and what she's trying to accomplish. So we'll see where it goes. I'm curious to see in the coming attraction. I mean, Lan wants to go to Moiraine, and apparently there's going to be a misunderstanding where the Alana's ice waters apparently seem to think that Moiraine and Lan might be working for Lanfear because of the note that Moiraine had that Lan then took. So it looks like we're going to have the stupid, contrived misunderstanding between friends that then has to be figured out, just because Lan has no actual plot here. So they have to just keep going through this made-up one until it's time for them to get him to Moiraine. So we'll see what happens next episode with that. I'm not looking forward to that stuff, but so Moiraine convinces Rand, okay, yeah, I want you to go to sleep. And when Lanfear comes for you, you know, just act like you want to be with her. Because she wants to be with you. Play on that. And see what we can find out. You're the eyes and ears for the two of us for now. So Rand goes to sleep. And then if you saw the trailers, the coming attraction trailers, there was that shot of a shirtless Rand like bound to this sort of big wooden wheel up on, like, it looked like the desert or something. And then we cut to that scene, and this is Rand bound to the wheel, and the camera pans around, and Liandrin sitting there across from him on a throne in this sort of black, almost dominatrix outfit. And she's looking at him, and she smiles, and she says, finally, and the episode ends. So Again, like I said at the start of this, an hour and 45 minutes ago, I do think this is the best episode of season 2 so far. And even though, yes, it continues to stray from the source material quite significantly, but they're, like I said, they're starting to take us a little further into the story now. You know, we know that Selene is Lanfear. We know now 2 of the Forsaken are free. They name dropped a bunch of other Forsaken. We got Gawain Traken mentioned, so whether we're going to get him in the TV show, I don't know, but at least he exists in this show, which is good. You've learned now that this thing called the Black Aja exists. And Perrin is now is with this Aiel woman, and the Aiel, we learn, are looking for the Kara Karn. So at least this episode did advance season 2's plot a little bit. And I think probably my favorite things this episode is, Lanfear is just a treat. I wasn't sure what to make of how they were going to play the character. The actress, again, Natasha O'Keefe, I think. I've seen her I've watched a little Peaky Blinders. It's another show I want to really finish and go all the way through. But I think now that she's stepped into her Lanfear persona, I think I'm going to really enjoy her in this role. And Varen, even though not book Varen, but I do like this sort of Sherlock Holmes sleuth Varen that we're getting here in the show. I like that as well. Continue to really like the Leandrin we're giving us, and especially the Leandrin Nynaeve scenes. Though I don't know how that dynamic is going to be at any point going forward now, because now that Nynaeve knows what Leanne's after, that Leandrin's a dark friend. I'm curious to see what Leandrin's going to do, because she's going to find herself in a pretty hard place to be if once she learns that not all 3 girls are in custody. But then again, Leandrin gave Nynaeve an opportunity to not be caught. So we'll see where that goes. But overall, let's say you gave a 6 out of 10 for Lanfear and Varen. I'm actually going to be a little more generous. I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. And a 7 being probably the high mark for me for as far as the score for this season. I ended up, when I first watched season 1, I came away with more positives than negatives, but that was forgiving the show a lot because of you can see the massive pandemic disruption to their even trying to make those last couple of episodes. But on a rewatch more recently, and then after rereading Eye of the World, I'd probably give season 1 maybe a 4 out of 10 to be a 5 out of 10 at the very most. Season 1 overall, I think, was a big disappointment for me. Season 2, I think, is a little better as a season. Production value's definitely gone up. Some of the writing is a little better. They continue to largely deviate from the story in the books, which, since this season was filmed 2 years ago in 2021, isn't surprising, because I don't think they had any feedback from the fans from season 1 before this season was really pretty well into production and filming. So we'll see. We'll see if they've taken anything since then to heart. And I know this is not a good place to be as a fan of a story. Looking forward to season 3 to see if it really is going to be book 4. But here, in this at least, I feel a little better about this episode than the previous ones. And there were interesting things here. And I just want to get the book 2 finale and the season 2 finale. I want what happens at the end of this book to happen in that final episode. So we'll see if that is going to be the case. I'm expecting Matt and Min are going to show up in Karian next episode. And the vision Min had of Matt stabbing Rand obviously is going to happen in one of these next couple of episodes. So what that actually will really be when we get to it, who knows? Will it be the show just be completely betraying and throwing away the character of Matt in the books and just making Matt a dark friend going forward, and we just get an entirely different Matt Coffin and an entirely different story? I can't imagine that they're going to do that, to be honest. I just can't see it. But I'm not going to say they won't, because clearly this character has been disparaged so much in this TV series from the beginning. So we'll see. But we'll see where they go from here, really. I don't know what else Perrin and Aviendha are going to do for the next 2 episodes before they get to the season finale. I don't know what there even is for them to do at this point, unless they're just going to have Perrin kind of meander through some book 3 stuff until the end of episode 7, where presumably he'll get back to Falm. And somehow Matt and Min and Rand and Moiraine are going to all have to get to, I'm assuming Moiraine, are all going to have to get to Karian. I mean, from Karian to Falma at the end of, for the season finale as well. Whether Bail Doman is going to show back up and sail them there, or whether there's a, they're going to go to the Waygate that's in Karian, and it just won't be guarded by Majin Shin like it is in the books. Or maybe we'll finally get an Ogier steading, and then they'll go to the Ogier steading outside of the city of Karian and go through that Waygate, which is what I think they do in the book. But we'll see. I just, at this point, I just really don't know what the hell there is for anybody to do between now and the season finale, where everything hits the fan in Falm. So, yeah, I guess that's about it for the Wheel of Time Season 2, Episode 5. Thank you, especially to Stan, for being here and giving me some interesting comments and your thoughts on this episode as well. I have not watched any of the either review channels that I usually watch for this episode yet, and I haven't watched any of the live streams from any of like the bigger Wheel of Time channels like Dusty Wheel or any of them to see what they all thought of this episode. I just wanted to kind of go into this review, my thoughts here, influenced by anyone else's opinion first. So now I'm going to be off probably the next couple of days. I'm going to now be going through all those videos just to see what everyone else actually thought as far as the YouTubers go that are part of the whole Wheel of Time kind of sort of corner, to see what they all thought of this episode. And yeah, we'll see. I'm just still curious about the Aiel. I mean, our introduction to Aviendha was fine. You know, I liked the fighting style. It kind of mirrored and fit with what we got from Tigraine in the Blood Snow scene in Season 1. So some similarities to it. I've yet to see how Ayula Smart is going to be in this role. So jury's still out as far as her casting for me, because we just got a tiny little taste of her character. Better written than that draft scene that was circulating a year or so ago of this Aviendha Perrin conversation. This was at least better written than that version was that had been circulating a year ago, which is good. But, you know, we'll see how it goes. I'm waiting to see. We're going to have Bane and Jihad showing up at some point. But then next season, again, is really the big tell when we go into the Threefold Land and see the Aiel in their own society, in their own land, and their own sort of culture, to see that sort of Scottish, Irish, Celtic clan like structure between all the different houses and families and relations and everything. So we'll see. But the Avienda scene wasn't as bad as I feared it would be. At least it wasn't poorly written, at least in terms of the dialogue. Like I said, having her completely ignore the lake next to her is just a big miss on the writer's part. But yeah, I'm rambling now, so I'm pretty much just going to wrap it up here at this point. Thank you again for watching. My playlist for my thoughts on the previous episodes so far in the season, it's in the show notes below. I am Charles. This is my SirBookSage channel. If this is what things you like, talking about sci-fi and fantasy, I hope to see you more. I'm going to be trying to live stream every Sunday, even after the Wheel of Time is done. Not sure if it's going to be Rings of Power or maybe some more A Song of Ice and Fire stuff that I've been meaning to get back to as a topic after the season is over here. Do the like, subscribe, all the YouTubey things. Closing in on 2,000 subscribers, so hopefully you guys can help me get there. And before I embarrass myself being a shill, I am going to bid you a good night. Happy reading, happy viewing, happy stories.